What if some of humanity's most advanced medical concepts weren't recorded in a modern, pristine laboratory, but in ancient India over 2,000 years ago? Welcome to this explainer. Today we're exploring a truly fascinating contrast. From ancient bronze surgical instruments to the modern, rotating DNA strands we study today, we are unpacking one of history's most debated medical texts, the Sushruta Samhita. Often celebrated as the absolute bedrock of ancient surgery, this work contains descriptions so sophisticated that some folks actually think it hints at knowledge way beyond what conventional history expects.
So it begs the ultimate historical mystery, right? Did these ancient physicians truly understand biological manipulation? I mean, were these surgeons, working with literal bronze tools, describing procedures that genuinely resemble modern plastic surgery or organ reconstruction? And did they have concepts that sound eerily like genetic engineering? Or are we just projecting our own modern science onto ancient wisdom? Well, we're going to separate the cold hard facts from the wild speculation. To get to the bottom of this, we've got to look at the Sushruta Samhita itself. This is an ancient Indian medical text attributed to a physician named Sushruta. And what makes this text a real game changer is its heavy emphasis on practical, anatomical study over just sitting around and philosophizing. Students were told to get their hands dirty. They learned anatomy through direct observation. Bodies were meticulously prepared and examined, literally layer by layer, letting them study muscles, vessels, bones, and organs in a completely hands-on way.
And the timeline here? It's absolutely astonishing. The earliest teachings date back to somewhere around the 6th century BCE, with the text fully coming together by the 3rd century BCE. Let that sink in. That is long before Rome even reached its peak. It's centuries before modern medical institutions were even a thought. Yet, it wasn't until the 18th century CE that European physicians actually encountered these surgical techniques and were just completely blown away.
To put the sheer scale of this manual into perspective, just think about this number: over 300. That's right, the Sushruta Samhita didn't just throw out a few herbal remedies. It meticulously outlined more than 300 distinct surgical procedures. Plus, it cataloged over 100 specific surgical instruments. It's an absolute monumental achievement for human medicine.
Just look at the specific categories of ancient surgical methods they outlined. We're talking cataract surgery, complex fracture treatments, advanced wound management, and reconstructive operations, along with that systematic anatomical education we just talked about. This wasn't some primitive guesswork. This was a highly structured, observation-based science that was undeniably brilliant for its time.
Section 1. Rebuilding the human body. The reconstruction marvel.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the steps they took are seriously mind-blowing. Back in ancient India, amputating a nose was sometimes used as a harsh punishment for crimes. So, surgeons developed a way to rebuild them. First, they took careful measurements. Precision was absolutely crucial. Second, they kept the skin flaps attached to preserve the blood supply. Actually, that part right there is incredibly advanced. Third, they'd carefully rotate the tissue into position. And fourth, they allowed it to heal gradually. Modern historians recognize this as one of the very first documented forms of plastic surgery. To modern eyes, this procedure uses principles that are still foundational in reconstructive surgery today.
Now, supporters of some of the more unconventional theories love to point to this. They argue that this implies ancient Ayurvedic surgeons possessed an unexpectedly advanced understanding of tissue growth and regeneration. But we need to pause here for a second and ask a critical question. Does reconstructing tissue actually imply knowledge of genetics? Well, no, not necessarily. But the plot thickens quite a bit when we shift our focus from surgery to how they viewed early human development.
Section 2. Decoding ancient embryology. You see, the Sushruta Samhita didn't just focus on fixing the adult body. It actually tracked how a fertilized embryo develops, literally month by month right inside the womb. They documented organs emerging, limbs forming, and features becoming distinct. Now, sure, these ancient physicians framed all of this within the spiritual and philosophical language of their time, but their empirical observation, spot on. They recognized that incredibly small changes during early development could produce major differences later in life. Which is wild, because today, modern developmental biology confirms exactly that. We know genes regulate those cellular processes. The ancient Ayurvedic scholars didn't have microscopes. They had zero concept of DNA. But they intuitively understood the massive importance of those early developmental stages.
Section 3. Myths of ancient biotechnology.
This level of ancient insight has naturally sparked some really intense modern speculation. If you look at several ancient Indian epic texts, you'll find stories of highly unusual births, engineered beings, and even what sounds like artificial incubation. For instance, there are narratives where embryonic material is allegedly separated and cultivated to produce multiple children from a single biological source. It's fascinating, right? Some enthusiasts look at these epics and argue that they're actually fragmented memories of a forgotten, highly advanced biotechnology.
And honestly, it makes total sense why people draw those conclusions. To modern readers, especially those of us familiar with cloning, CRISPR gene editing, and stem cell research, the parallels here can seem absolutely striking. We live in a world where modifying DNA feels like magic sometimes. So when we read ancient myths about transforming bodies or separating embryos, human nature kind of forces us to connect the dots and search for our own modern reflections in the past.
So the crucial point is this: historians are really careful to remind us not to treat mythological epics as literal medical manuals. Ancient medicine was brilliant, but it operated entirely on a framework of balance, observation, holistic health, and symbolic narratives. Modern genetics, on the other hand, relies on a massive, literal chain of discoveries: cells, microscopes, chromosomes, the actual structure of DNA. Those specific technical building blocks just aren't in the ancient texts. The similarities we see are conceptual, not technical.
Section 4. The True Medical Legacy.
But when we strip away the modern myths, what we are left with requires absolutely no exaggeration to be amazing. The genuine legacy of the Sushruta Samhita is staggering. We are talking about systematic surgical training, the creation of over 100 specialized instruments, observation-based anatomy, incredibly complex reconstructive procedures, and a deep commitment to practical experimentation. Sushruta is rightfully remembered as a true pioneer of scientific surgery, proving that mind-blowing medical innovation flourished far outside the conventional Western historical narratives we're so used to.
So no, they probably weren't editing DNA in 500 BCE, but they were asking the exact same fundamental questions that drive modern genetics today. Questions like, how does a body actually develop? They asked, can biological structures be repaired? Can they be rebuilt? The technology has drastically changed. The language has changed. But that fundamental burning human curiosity, that hasn't changed one bit. It is exactly the same.
They wanted to know, can growth be guided? The Sushruta Samhita proves that humanity's quest to decode the blueprint of life didn't just start in some modern lab. It began thousands of years ago. And it leaves us with this final, lingering thought. If the drive to understand and manipulate life has been with us for millennia, what ancient, fundamental questions are we asking today that will define the science of tomorrow?